Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to talk to you about some books that I was required to read in school and whether or not I liked them. We are starting to enter back to school season, the time of year when kids are getting ready to go back to school. And although I've been out of school for quite some time now, I always get those same nostalgic getting ready to start the new school year feelings around this time of year. So I thought I would take this opportunity to look back on my school-aged years and think about all the books that I was required to read for classes and try to remember what feelings I had toward them. Some of these I really liked, other ones I really didn't like, but we will start with one that I did enjoy, and that was Night by Elie Wiesel. This was a book that was assigned to me during a high school social studies class during a unit when we were studying World War II. This is a memoir, mostly at least, of Wiesel's time spent in concentration camps from 1944 to 1945. This book is considered to be a foundationary piece of Holocaust literature, so you can understand why we were assigned it when we were studying World War II and the Holocaust. When we were assigned this book, it was one of the very few times in high school that I remember just being given a book and told to read it by a certain date, instead of having it broken down for us into sections and reading it as a class over a few weeks. I remember being really thrilled with the independence that that gave me. I was ready for college way before I got there. I was getting really frustrated with other people structuring my learning. I was ready to structure my own. And so being able to read this at my own pace, I think really contributed to the positive feelings that I have toward this book. Because we were allowed to read this one at our own pace, I was able to just sit down and read exactly how much of the book that I wanted to read at that time. But I do remember basically binge reading this book, and it was one of the most eye-opening, moving reading experiences that I had had up to that point in my life. I will not claim that I was the perfect high school student or that I was always engaged with what I was learning, but I do remember being really, really engaged in the discussion that we had as a class about this book. I think I'm due for a reread of this one. But now on to the opposite end of the spectrum. A book that I read in high school that I really did not like was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is the only novel by Emily Bronte, one-third of the famous Bronte sisters, and this is the tumultuous love story between Catherine Earnshaw and her adopted brother Heathcliff. I remember that this entire book was basically a study in melodrama, and all the characters in it are awful, some to the point of being evil. I really struggled through this book. I remember dreading my homework every night, trying to read the chapters that we were assigned and answering questions about it. I have since heard people refer to this book as a romantic love story, and I fear for the people who think that. The relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff is not something you should aspire to. That relationship is supremely toxic. I thought this whole book was extra in not a good way, and I, to this day, remain incensed that this was my introduction to the Brontes. I feel like if I would have started with Jane Eyre, then I would have fallen in love with the classics way earlier than I did. But going back to a book that I actually did enjoy in school, I would next like to talk about The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I believe we were assigned this one when I was a junior in high school. This is the story of J. Gatsby, a man who goes to great lengths to acquire vast riches, hoping to reattract his long-lost love, Daisy Buchanan. This is the novel that people think about when they think about the Roaring Twenties. It is full of music, boozy parties, and drama. I loved it then. I continue to love it now. I've reread it several times since I first read it in high school, and it never fails to impress me. Even talking about it right now makes me want to drop everything and reread this book. The color symbolism in this. Okay. The next book that I was required to read in high school was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I feel like, along with The Great Gatsby, this is a very common piece of required reading for American high school students. This is set in a small town in the American South, in which a black man is accused of raping a young white woman. The lawyer assigned to defend this man, Tom Robinson, is a very well-known character in literature now, Atticus Finch. Our main character in this book is his daughter, Jean Louise, nicknamed Scout. So many people fall in love with this book when they are required to read it in school. I just failed to connect to it. I certainly didn't hate this book. I just didn't see the charm or feel the impact that so many others did and continue to do. So when I think about this book now, I get this feeling of disappointment, like I'm missing out on what everybody else is seeing in this book. but I have accepted that this one just isn't for me. The next book that I read in high school was Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. This is a book I read in my later years of high school, and in it we follow the character of Okonkwo. We see his fall from grace in his Nigerian village, and we also see the greater destruction of his world upon the arrival of European missionaries. Like Night by Elie Wiesel, this is another one that I remember really speeding through. I remember it didn't take me very long at all to read the sections that we were assigned every night. I remember enjoying doing the homework, and I also remember really enjoying the discussions that we had in class on this one, discussing imperialism. I just recently finished Homegoing by Ya Jesse, and during the reading experience of that book, I couldn't help but keep thinking about this book, and anytime I hear the word yam, I think of this book. During school, I was also required to read Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I remember being fairly young when we read this one, so either late middle school or early high school, and this was another one that I really didn't like. This book is about a group of young boys who are stranded on an island after they survive a plane crash. They try to form a society, but end up descending into chaos and ultimately evil. At the time, and definitely now looking back, this book has always seemed like a self-righteous exaggeration, and it certainly seemed at the time like it was directed at the boys in our class. To be completely frank about it, I thought it was chest-beating and stupid, and I really didn't like the reading experience. But the last two books that I would like to talk to you about in this video were ones that I enjoyed much, much more. The first of those two was the most memorable book that I remember reading in all of my school experience. That was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is the story of Pip, a young orphan boy being raised by his taskmaster, much older sister, and her blacksmith husband. Just when Pip is all set up to become the apprentice of his blacksmith brother-in-law, he finds out that he has a mysterious benefactor who is going to pay for his schooling so that he can become a gentleman. Pip strongly suspects that this benefactor is the mysterious and strange spinster, Miss Havisham, a woman who has not taken off her wedding dress since she was left at the altar many years ago. Although this is one that I liked and didn't necessarily love, the beginning of this story just stays with you. Miss Havisham has got to be one of the most interesting characters in literature of all time. And every time I think about this book, I can't help but think about my literature teacher who taught this book to us. He doubled as the head of the theater department, and I was involved in theater in high school, so I knew him very well. He basically looks like a fifth member of the Beatles. He was extremely strict, but so much fun to be around. I just loved him. I have since gone on to reread this book, and although my impressions of it remained the same, of liking it but not really loving it, I will always have strong nostalgic feelings toward this book. And the last piece of required reading that I would like to talk to you about is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This one has become extremely well known recently due to the recent Hulu adaptation of this. This is a dystopian tale in a society where women can no longer easily bear children. So women who had already had children prior to the totalitarian takeover are assigned to powerful men to bear their children if their wives cannot. I actually wrote my senior thesis on the color imagery used in this book. This is the actual copy that I bought at Borders for the purposes of writing that paper. I don't know if you can see my old faded highlighting in there from when I was a high schooler. I really enjoyed this book. I found it extremely powerful, and I ended up really enjoying writing that paper. This is one that I want to reread, if only because I've been putting off watching the Hulu adaptation until I do so. So those were 8 pieces of required reading that I remember from my school-aged years. I would love to hear from you down in the comment section below if you were required to read any of these books, or if there were any that you were required to read that I did not mention. I'd like to know those as well. You can put that or any other comments or questions you may have down in the comment section below, or if you'd like to chat with me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media. The links to all of my profiles are linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.